and thank you for having me here. So my name is Axel Steinhage. I know it's difficult to pronounce for other people. However, in German, it's quite a normal name. And yeah, in 1998, I received my PhD in theoretical physics. And you might ask yourself, what does a theoretical physicist do on a neuroscience conference? And I could argue with the famous physicist and Nobel Prize winner Sheldon Cooper. And I could say everything is physics except for mathematics. And as this, to my perception, is not a mathematics conference, so I feel well accepted here. Later on, I will present more reasons, and one of these reasons is really not this trivial one of Sheldon Cooper, but that I have worked between 1990 and 2001 at an Institute for Neuroinformatics in Germany. So at that time, the task, and I still believe it's still the task of that institute, was to investigate the neural processing mechanisms in animals and also humans, which belong to the same group, and to try to transform these, or transmit, I would rather say, these physical and mathematical mechanisms to machinery, like robots, for example. That was our task at that time. And so even 25 years later, I'm still interested in that, and that was my main motivation to come here. Between 2001 and 2005, I have worked for a company named Infineon in Germany, which is an offspring of Siemens company, which you might know. And it's an electronics company. However, they had a big research department, and there I had a group on man-machine interaction, consequently, like I have done before at that Institute of Neuroinformatics. At that time, at Infineon, I have worked more on the practical side of that. And there I got to know Christel Lauterbach, who is right now my business partner. And she has founded in 2005 the company Future Shape. And I joined it also in 2005 directly. And that company is in Höhenkirchen, which is quite close to Munich in Germany. And we are somehow into smart textiles, and I will explain what this has to do with the topic of this conference in a minute. I would just like you to imagine what do you do when you collect data? Yeah, we learned that before in the talks before. You either rather subjectively you observe people, how they behave, or you ask them, or you distribute questionnaires. But that is not really satisfying for a real scientist, and that's why you also use sensors. Yeah, you collect objective data, quantitative data through sensors, physical sensors, and that's, by the way, another reason why you should have physicists with you, like NMRI and CT and all that was discovered or developed by physicists, and therefore that's quite important to have that knowledge also in the loop. However, usually when you use these methods, which I just mentioned, like also heart rate measurement or blood pressure measurement, it's episodic. You measure just during that moment. However, there are some things or some studies where you would like to measure people for longer periods of time. So for that, you would need sensors which are connected or close by the people for much longer time, for the whole daytime, for example. And if you imagine now, where would you put the sensors to be close to the people all the time? If you imagine which is the object that during most time of the day, and also right now, you have contact to, all of us, it's the floor. Yeah, you have at least 1 foot on the floor. So that's the object where you should put sensors in. Yeah. And yeah, why? You could also ask why. Of course, that's because of gravity. Yeah, and I could go into that as well and talk about quantum gravity. I could do that, but from your eyes, I see that you would rather like me to talk about the floor, and that's what I will do. I have mentioned already the word smart textiles, and in the floor business, you have textile everywhere. Here, for example, the floor covering is also carpet, it's textile. So we decided to produce a sensor underlay also made of textile, of smart textile. And the sensors are built into this smart textile. We produce it, as you can see here on the upper left picture, in a roll-to-roll process or reel-to-reel process, like it's common in the textile domain. Yeah, like carpets are produced in the same way. However, in our case, there's electronics inside, so a lot of electronics, which is built into the textile. And when you walk across the floor, then you produce signals, yeah, because the sensors that we built in are capacitive. And capacitive means that they act from a distance already, so they are proximity sensors. So what you can do now is to put that sensor underlay under the floor covering, so you would not even see it. Yeah, and you can put, due to that capacitive measurement principle, you can put on top any type of floor covering which you know. Yeah, so carpet, PVC. However, you could also put parquet or even tiles on top, because these are the proximity sensors which do not react on pressure but on just presence. Yeah, like your smartphone screen as well. It's the same principle, or a touchpad works in the same way. You don't have to press, you just have to touch it. Yeah? And that's the same here. And the data is transmitted wirelessly to a receiver, which you can see on the lower left. And there's the software inside, which we also develop according to the applications. And on the right, in the picture on the right, you can see schematically what happens if a person walks across the floor. Then you get these signals with every step. And when, by accident, for example, a person falls down and rests on the floor, you get a different pattern. And there you can see already which applications might be interesting, especially with respect to healthcare or to the topic of this conference. And that is, for example, analyzing the gait pattern. So how do you put your feet on the floor when you are walking? And also healthcare is also about discovering incidents like people who have fallen in a nursing home or whatever. Yeah, and these are our main applications. The characteristics are written here. So as I said, installable under any flooring. So on the invisibility is really important. You will see that later when we come to the gait analysis, that it's important that the people who are taking part in studies of gait recognition, for example, they don't have the feeling that there's a sensor that they are running on currently. They just walk like normally on a normal floor. Just to give you some insights where this has been built in already. So in a couple of nursing homes, as you could imagine, we have built that in since 2012, by the way. The first years of our company, we needed to develop the system, but since 2012, at least the hardware hasn't changed. So it's really the same system throughout these years. But you can also see on the right that there are some applications like gaming. Yeah, so serious games even is important for measuring or assessing the capabilities of elderly people, or fragility, or so I think you call it. So that's also in the set of applications. However, also things like retail and seeing where the customers are, or sports, or even leisure, multimedia games, and so on. So now I come to the healthcare domain. And there you see, when you build this into a nursing home, for example, you have the possibility to see what happens within the resident's room without having to go there. Yeah, so when a person falls, like in the picture on the lower right, as I mentioned before, you get a specific pattern, and the software in the receiver calculates, hey, there is an incident, and then there's a warning going out to the nurses, for example, like you see on the upper right. That is a nursing home in Czech Republic, where they have really a big screen where all the rooms of the whole nursing home is being displayed. And it's not only about these hazards like falls, but as you can see on the lower right, you can extract a lot more information, like, for example, activities of daily living. So you know, for example, when people wake up in the morning, if there's a change over a long time in these activities of daily living, you can see how active that person is by just observing the number of steps. Yeah, or you can even infer some things like socializing. Yeah, because you know how long people stay within their room and how often they leave their room to take part in social activities, for example, in the nursing home. And there we approach slowly to the topics of this conference, that you can use this objective data to get an insight into the health status of people and also into the change over a long time of this status. Yeah. One concrete example here is data from an existing nursing home. And there you can see on the upper right, you can see a room of a resident, and you can see over 24 hours the trajectory of movement of that person in the room. And if you look at the timeline on top, you see that this person has moved a lot during the night, because this is in 24-hour format. And you can see that even during the night at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, that person woke up and walked around all the night. Yeah. And you can imagine that during the day, if you observe a person, a resident in the nursing home, who is kind of tired or not really responsive, then you could have a look at that data and could see, that's quite clear, that person has been up all night. Yeah? And then you can even put the medication level specifically tailored to these events. So you could, for example, say, okay, we would like that person to sleep more at night. So you could give a medication which supports that, but you could, however, start with a very low doses on that. Yeah, and you could observe over the next nights how this how this changes the behavior, and you could stop exactly there where you see, okay, that's then a normal behavior. He sleeps or she sleeps at night, so we don't have to give more. Yeah, so you can really tailor your medication according to this. On the lower right, you see another example. That's an Alzheimer patient. And you can see that there's quite the opposite. During the night, he sleeps, and then he gets up quite late for the usual cases in such nursing homes. Usually they get up much earlier than 8:30 in the morning. But this patient, he is really sleeping in all night and then getting up and then wandering around all day. So he is really very active during the day and somehow too active. Yeah, and that's quite the opposite. So in this case, you could also apply medication to change that rhythm to a normal one. So that by this you can learn about the behavior of people and in an objective way. So we have worked not only with nursing homes, but also on the academic domain by having cooperation project, for example, with University LMU in Munich, but also with Ostrava University. I think there's a talk coming up later from Ostrava University, and that's quite interesting, because exactly there we have also equipped two apartments with our system, and that is also being used for these behavioral studies. yeah, and you can see that we are also trying to apply neural network models. So there's my history about the neuroinformatics coming in to try to identify, for example, or classify people with respect to their behavior. And of course, we can only see the projection, the two-dimensional projection of the walking behavior. So that's, of course, only a part of behavior, but very important part, because you can see in the walk pattern, in the gait pattern, you can see a lot of illnesses, for example, like you have seen before with the Alzheimer. And the idea is now to train neural networks to discover these illnesses quite early. So even when we could not discover it from just looking at the gait patterns, maybe a well-trained neural network can. And we are quite positive or optimistic about that, because in the papers you can see here on the lower left, it was already proven that it's possible to do that and to even classify or identify people just by their movement in the room over a short time. So that's really promising research we are doing right now. And then I come to another example that is really gait analysis. We are using a higher, especially higher resolution version of this sensor underlay for this. So that's 55 sensor fields per square meter. So each sensor field is really even smaller than the size of a foot. We need that because we are also interested in how the foot is being placed on the floor, because that gives also a lot of insight. Yeah, and the software is calculating parameters from a gait. For example, here it's a 6-meter walk. And we are extracting parameters like the stride length, the step length, the stride width, the asymmetry, the cadence, and things like that, which are easy, not easy, but which can be extracted by ordinary algorithms from the picture. And on the right side, you see some examples of diseases which we knew from questionnaires and from asking those patients. And you can see that these walking patterns are quite different. So we have on the third line, for example, we again have an Alzheimer patient. On the very low right panel, we have an ordinary walk, quite fast. So that could be you and me. But we also have asymmetry from a hip fraction, for example, or we have a very asymmetric walk due to hydrocephalus illness, for example, in the brain. And so that gives us confidence that this could be learned in a model. And we have already started with some research on that. And this shows, for example, a setup we had at a trade fair where we let 82 subjects walk. So these were not ill or disease subjects, but ordinary visitors of the trade fair. And we got a data collection from 82 subjects. And we looked at the data, and even with us being not medical doctors, we could identify that the asymmetry in the walk is really one indicator. In all the cases where we saw an asymmetry of more than 7 centimeters in the stride length between left and right, or I should rather say the averaged stride length during that walk, those people had preconditions. So they told us, yes, that's true. For example, in one case, it was that one leg was a little bit longer than the others. One other had a fraction shortly before. So that is also quite interesting for these models that we are training right now on this data set, which gives us also confidence that it is possible to tell illnesses right from the walking pattern, which you can't do just by looking at the data or looking at the image. You really have to use a neural network to extract the features from it. Then, of course, you can use it at home as a building automation system as well, and you could combine it with things like observing the behavior of people at home when you don't have a nurse being there 24/7. Then this system could somehow replace a nurse and discover changes in the behavior over longer periods of time. This is one apartment that was equipped in that way. And there is on the second level of that house, there's a couple had moved in where it's exactly the case that one of the two is in need of care and the other is not. And that gives, of course, kind of freedom for that person who has to care for his partner, because you can use the system somehow during the times when you are not at home, just to look for your partner. And that gives them quite relieved feeling. You can still live your life normally and still care for your partner on a 24/7 basis. Yeah, so this is my last slide. And there, of course, I would like to mention, especially as I'm here in the academic domain, I would like to mention that we are really interested in partnership, not only by enlarging our academic network, which we already have done. So we have a lot of universities like Lübeck in Germany, or like I mentioned already, Ostrava University in Czech Republic, and some research institutes in France we have in the loop as well. But we also really concretely do master and bachelor thesis in our company. So somebody who is interested into using the system for research can also get in contact with us. And of course, if there are funded projects, that's also our daily business, that we can get involved into that and try to contribute quantitative data on the level of human behavior, which is basically what we are doing. And then I can give a last argument why I think it was a good decision to come here, and that is my daughter. She is studying psychology. And from the speeches that I heard yesterday and already today, I feel now in the position to discuss with her much better than I have been before. So I could even show off when I come home what I have learned here. So that's one of the big motivations now to come here next time as well, I would say. Thank you.